think we can all relate to that common feeling of being completely overwhelmed by the huge amount of choices that we face in our modern lives. Just the act of switching on Netflix and trying to decide what you want to watch usually ends in overwhelm, and we just end up watching the same thing as we usually do. In life, we often think that having more choice is a good thing, but as Barry Schwartz explains in The Paradox of Choice, that having too many choices often leads to us feeling frustrated, less happy, and ultimately less satisfied with the choices we end up making. And if you've never heard of The Paradox of Choice, I highly recommend checking out Barry Schwartz's TED Talk. I'll link it in the description below. One of the things that I've learned is that too many choices often leads to what's called analysis paralysis. This is when you're trying to make a decision, you've researched so much and looked at all the choices that you just ultimately are overwhelmed and can't make the decision. In fact, I experienced it this week in trying to prepare for this video. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and give you 3 tips on how to avoid analysis paralysis. Each video that I've made so far, I've tried to improve on some aspect of filmmaking, and this week I really wanted to improve on the production value. This ultimately led me to research new equipment from this YouTube channel, new cameras, new lighting, audio equipment, you know the stuff. So after going on YouTube and searching the internet for a while, I was completely confused about what I should buy. Also, this was not helped by the constant repetition by successful YouTubers saying you don't need fancy equipment to make videos. Thanks. So I realized that I was carrying around this cognitive baggage all week, and it was impairing my ability to think creatively and took all the enjoyment out of making these videos. After all, like, buying new stuff should be fun, right? So here are 3 tips that you can use to prevent analysis paralysis. Tip number 1, set some criteria. In all these tips, what we're trying to do is limit the number of choices. If too much choice is a bad thing, then we need to artificially limit the choices so that we don't get paralyzed by all the research that we do. So tip number 1 is set some criteria, set some rules about the things that you want to buy. For example, if you want to buy a new camera, like I'm interested in doing, define what is really important about that camera and why you need it. Does it need 4K filming capabilities? Can you plug in an external microphone, for example? So set these rules before you start looking, and that way you don't get completely distracted by all the gimmicky new technologies that are out there that you feel you might need. Tip number 2 is that you have to set your constraints. So constraints can be money, time, energy, any of those 3 things. And obviously it's good to set a limit on what you're going to spend if it's a purchase that you're doing, and I would actually recommend setting it a bit higher than you think, because we often underestimate either how expensive things are, or for example, if you're trying to learn something or invest time in something, you should set a bit more time, because we're pretty bad at estimating that too. So tip number 3 is imagine the worst case scenario and realize that it probably is not going to be that bad. Even if I bought a camera that I wasn't fond of, I could always take it back, or I could probably make do with it. It's probably not going to be as bad as what I'm thinking. But ultimately, some choice is better than having no choice. So just remember that most of us are pretty lucky to be in these situations. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you got some sort of value out of it or learned something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.